Cool stuff. All right, the recording is on, so we're going to get started in about in just a couple minutes. We'll start at 6 o'clock with the welcome and all that jazz, but we'll leave up our little slide deck here rotating for your enjoyment, so you can see who's all sponsoring this and what all's coming up. And then once we do that, we can kick over into the actual meetup itself. So. In the meantime, if anybody does want to chat, please take yourself off mute and actually chat. I mean, this is one of the reasons that we're actually here. It's open for that. So.
Hey Ken, how are you doing? Amber from Oregon.
Hey Amber, I'm great. How are you?
Good, thanks.
How's the golf business going these days?
It's crazy.
You know, it's interesting because on the island it's crazy too. I mean, I think we have a course over here that last year did 40,000 rounds, and they're on pace this year to do 70,000. It's just
insane.
Nuts.
It's insane. And even our restaurant, I mean, it's social distance to the max, and our numbers are higher than last year's actuals.
I guess everybody's staying home. They got nothing else to do with it.
Yeah. I think, you know, we're following protocols to the hilt. So we've got some people that feel really safe there, and they come 5 times a week. So it's been a really weird year.
Crazy.
Very tech heavy though. You know, we're doing contactless pay and online everything and curbside ordering, and so it's been really it's been nuts.
Yeah, that makes sense. Story over here as well. So interesting. Yeah, it's amazing to actually see that. I didn't expect that it was going to be that busy here for golf. And I mean, I got out last week, and yeah, I mean they're pushing on pace of play, and but everything was trying to stay away. And I mean, I think you're allowed to get there 30 minutes before one person or one group in the pro shop at a time, and that's it, right? So.
Yeah.
But it's good. I mean, I'm glad to see that things are still sort of moving out there and people are keeping safe and whatnot. Is nice to see. So.
Yeah, it's good. You know, we kind of sheltered for weeks back in March, and then kind of slowly reopened. But I mean, we had to rethink every single procedure in the book.
Yep.
So,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's been fantastic so
cool.
far.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? It looks like it is 6. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this thing off and get it started. I see that I see messages coming in from people outside Canada. Yeah. There's not definitely one. You're not one from away. Probably Australia here. So thanks for joining and whatnot. We're going to get started with. Go through and quickly sort of kick through a couple of slides along the way here to show off sponsors who make this event possible here. So I'm actually going to stop the slideshow because it's not actually one, and we'll go and put this one on screen, which is what we're looking at. So we're going to have Parv coming up in a few minutes after Joseph gives us the what's new in Power BI. He'll run the feature presentation from about 6:20 to 7:20 or so. Before we, kick into all that, I do want to just acknowledge the help that we get for doing all these things from Microsoft for helping us host the Teams environment here. Yana's always here getting the recording going and it downloads it for me so that I can actually post it on YouTube, which is what we're doing now. Excel Guru and SkillWave are 2 of the companies that I'm associated with that put together all of this kind of stuff, and Pass as well. Speaker range. I'm super excited about this. We got Casey Reinecke coming from the Excel team. She's actually going to be talking about some alpha data types that are actually coming out to Excel. This is like cool stuff. You got with SkillWave, a BI virtual boot camp coming up. I've done this in person many times. We're now moving it into an online plus Q&A plus some consulting aspects. Check that out if you're interested. You can find the URL there. As always, connect with Pass. They help us out with these things, and definitely, if you can, support their virtual summit this year. This is one of their biggest events that they're trying to get going here, and it's the place that they actually generate their funding to keep the Pass organization going, and they really need help to stay alive at this point in time. They do all kinds of really good quality checking, and if you do, you can use this code to get 50% registration. Finally, if you like what you see with these things and you be part we'd love to have you. Just send a note to Rebecca@excelguru.ca. We currently have our speakers committed all the way to November, which is absolutely fantastic. This user group. But you know what? We're always looking for more speakers. So if you're interested, please let us know. And on that note, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kick it over to Joseph and let him take over so he can go and do the What's Power BI for this month. And we're expecting big things from Joseph this time because he's more than one day to prepare. So you ready, bud?
I'm good to go.
Cool deal. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I will let you take over.
Perfect. Let's do that. All right. Well, I guess echoing what Ken said, welcome everybody. It's always I'm still so excited to see people from outside of Vancouver come to our meetup groups. It always puts me in a good mood before presenting the what's new. So just before we jump in for some of the new features and updates for this month, just a little bit about me. My name is Joseph Yeates, and I'm a data analyst at Blue Shore Financial, a credit union in North Vancouver. My website's up there at feathersanalytics.com, where I blog about Power BI, Power Query, Excel, R, but really my passion is how to sort of bring some of those more advanced analytics from R into Power BI and make them more accessible for users really across an organization. My Twitter handle and my LinkedIn is up there as well, at Feathers Analytics. I'm always happy to connect with anyone in the community. If you want to talk data or really whatever, please feel free to connect. I'm always happy to connect to the community. So with that, why don't we jump into this month? So as always, a summary of some of the updates or the monthly updates from the Power BI desktop release can be found on the Microsoft Power BI blog. So they're grouped nicely into some different sections. So reporting, analytics, visualization, some data prep. I'm going to highlight 3 of my favorite from this month, and then maybe if there's time at the end, just mention some of the others that have caught my eye as well. So the first one is the rectangular lasso select for data point. So if we actually go to my website quickly, in April, I previewed a really similar feature for selecting multiple visuals in a Power BI report. So that sort of allows, using the same thing, you can select multiple visuals, and that can allow you to group them, to copy them, to sort of move them all together. And now we have similar sort of thing within the visuals themselves. So if I just jump into Power BI here, we can see that I have a scatter chart here, an area chart, and then a line chart. So what we're able to do in the within the desktop application, sort of in the author view, is if you hold down the control key, and then you can just make a box. And I'm just selecting these sort of top data points, and that cross filters the other visuals in my report. Now my area chart's just looking at these data points, and the line chart down there too. If I want to click off of that, I can just click back in. So this works for line, scatter, and area charts. And I think this is really useful. If I'm looking at this visual and I sort of see, okay, well, we went from really low to really high here. Previously, if this was displayed as a bar chart, we could sort of control click on multiple bars, but that can get a bit tedious if you're if there's a high level of granularity in your data. But now all I have to do is sort of control click, drag my box like that, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, so what's going on here? You know, we have some heart rate information, we have some running route information, so that's kind of cool. And then exact same thing with the line chart. Like I see a little bit of a increase, a little bit of a hill here. Same thing. If I just want to select that, everything else cross filters. So this is really, really handy. I think when you're dealing with visuals with a lot of continuous data in it, this can also be useful for categorical data. But I think, again, when you just have lots of data points within your report or within your visuals, this can help really hone into areas there. This functionality does only support up to a limit of 300 data points. So if you had a huge scatter chart with lots of dots, you couldn't just sort of grab a huge section. but I'm sure that there'll be enhancements to that in the future as well. The last little part of this update that I'd like to highlight as well, that as well as holding sort of control to select a box, it's kind of difficult if I just wanted to do this little area down here, and I don't want to accidentally grab stuff up here or over to the right. If I control click my box, if I hold down my shift key, just like with other, just like in other Microsoft applications to select multiple ranges, I can keep holding down and actually do multiple selects that add it to my group. So this makes it really useful if we're used to trying to do the square to select data points that maybe doesn't fit into sort of a nice rectangle. So you can control click, shift click to select everything. When this is actually published and it's in the read view, either on the service or maybe even in Power BI report server, you don't have to use the control key. You can just users will just be able to drag and do the lasso to select the data points that they want. So that was the first update that I really liked and caught my eye. The second update that I'm going to focus on comes from the data prep section, and this is the text and CSV from example. So if I go to the Get Data tab on the ribbon in the desktop app, and I say text CSV, and I just want to import a CSV that I actually exported from one of my R scripts. So I'm going to hit OK. And then when this window pops up, we can see this is pretty standard so far. This is similar to previous experience, importing a text or CSV file. We have some of the origin. We can select the delimiter, which for CSVs is comma, and then some of the data type detection. What is new down here is we can now extract a table using examples. So I'm gonna click on this so we can see what this is about. So in the top section up here, in the top window, we can see actually a preview of the file with the first 200 rows. And if I scroll down, we can see, okay, well, these are our column headers up at the top, comma delimited, and these are some of the rows. Usually we would just import that straight into the Power Query editor, and we could start doing some of our data transformation or manipulation there. But what we can do now is if I just wanted to pull in like someone's name, I can see from the first row that name's Chamberlain. If I go to and actually I only need one. Right away, I wanted to extract this value out of all the rows, and it's already picked up on it. So all the way down, I just need to type in one row as a preview, and it sort of caught the pattern. If the next one over, if I wanted to do like points, for instance, so that's just like the numeric value next to their name. So in that first one, it's 55. Same thing, bang, we see 55, 47, 49, and it's already brought that in for all of us. So I could either load this directly into my data model or into my Power BI report, but we're really going to want to kick it into the Power Query editor. If you're not using this feature, I think Ken's probably going to have a heart attack. And yeah, it's just awesome. We should always be going in the Power Query editor, whether it's Excel, Power BI, or otherwise. My favorite thing from this feature is, we get this preview. We just selected it from examples. We didn't need to do any code at all. We just sort of typed in what we wanted to see. But it does bring in all of the applied steps on the right-hand side now. We can go back and we can click through and we can see exactly which transformations were applied to our data to get to this end point. So if I click back in my source step, we can see, okay, yeah, we're bringing in that CSV file. This is what it looks like. And automatically, we removed the top rows. We inserted an extra column after delimiter, and then we extracted some text. We renamed and changed the type. But we can actually see all the individual steps within Power Query that were applied to our underlying data source that resulted in exactly the table that we see and wanted to load to our query. Why I think this is really powerful is that there was, using the connect to web, there was a table from example as well. And so I'm just going to go through a quick demo of that. So if I'm going to go to Wikipedia, and what I want is to return sort of just a few columns from this table here. So I'm going to take the URL, paste it back in here, and I'm going to hit OK. And then it's just going to connect to that URL using the web connector. And right away it spins off, and we have a lot of examples that we can connect to, some HTML tables, some suggested tables. This functionality came out a few months ago, and this is really cool as well. But we have the add table using examples. So this is a really similar experience to the new text or CSV. We get a preview of the web page up there. And so if I want to bring in the stadiums, and so I'll say Anfield, and then there's Arsenal Stadium. And again, so it picked up all the stadium names. That's great. If I wanted to bring in the team as well, so we'll say, oh, spelled that wrong. Liverpool. And then Arsenal. And this one usually takes 2, and then it fills it in. So that looks good so far. Really similar to what we did with the CSV example. This is the custom table that we just built using examples. That's what I want. So if I hit OK and I bring that into the editor, here we go. The difference here is that we don't really see all of those applied steps to the underlying data. If I hit my source step, we're just returning the browser context of our URL. There's a bunch of HTML code in here, not very readable, not very auditable. The only applied step we have is we're extracting a table from that HTML, and then we change the type. So not really useful. We don't really know what's going on outside of our example. So that's why I really like the ability to go back and see exactly what was done, exactly what was applied to our source data doing this. I'm just going to spin off one more example using this functionality, because I think what can be really powerful with this is if I connect to a text file that looks like this. So we have, sort of some text, some number, some text, and this is that vertically stacked data. We can see this with invoices or receipts, with different line items, but we sort of see that these texts probably relate to each other. The second row of numerical data relates to each other, and then the points do as well. So this is a preview of that. If I extract the table using examples, I can do the same thing. I can say, okay, what's my team? If we do Liverpool, the second one would be Man City. And right away, it picks up on that pattern of detecting, okay, I just want to return sort of every third row. If I want to do the number of wins that team had, so I want that 32. And then again, 26, 18, 20, it picks up on it right away. So when I load that, coming from my text file, when I land this here, again, we can go back. This is all auditable. We can go and see exactly what happened. We have our source step, then we add an index column. We add some conditional logic onto that so we can group our rows. And I know that Excel Guru have a recipe card for very similar type of data to get it into this shape. And so I was interested to see how sort of some of the out-of-the-box AI from Microsoft compares to that recipe card. And it's quite similar. There's some things in here that I wouldn't have thought of doing, of how to transform this data. So that's really useful as well. If you want to apply this to different data sources, now you have some sort of idea of where you could start to take that vertically stacked data and return just this nice table into your data model. I'm just going to exit out of the editor now, and I'm going to go to the last. One of the last updates from this month, one of the last features, is a new visual from XViz. So you can import the visual by going to get more visuals from the marketplace. Fortunately, I've already done that. So this is a custom visual. This doesn't come native in Power BI, but it is in the marketplace as a trusted visual. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. I previewed some of the XViz visuals before. They sort of have some listed down here. I'm going over the linear gauge chart that was new this month, but they have a great selection of sort of additional visuals that aren't out of the box in Power BI and can help fill in sort of some of the gaps if there's something that you really need that isn't there. So what's great about this gauge visual is we can start looking, and it's good for sort of tracking KPIs or tracking goals, so we can see our progress towards some sort of target. So if I drop like my actual value in here, right away, that's all we need to get started, is just that, you know, this is the thing that we're measuring. This is our actual value. So right away we can see, okay, we're at 5,900 or almost 6,000 for either the year or some sort of progress. In the formatting options, in the axes, we can turn that on if we want, just so we have some of those relative points. I can change the colors as well. So, you know, if I want my progress maybe to be blue, sorry, down here, this is the fill track actual value is the blue. And if I want to make this tick up here, I can make that a dark blue so I can more easily see it. We have lots of different formatting here as well that I could go into and probably spend a whole session on. One of the things I like is we have the ability to switch that ticker from a triangle to like an inverted triangle or to a diamond, just to make it a little bit easier to see. As well as the actual value, if we actually do have a target either for the year or for our KPI, we can drop a target value in, and then we can see our progress to target as well, and we can see exactly how we're progressing. And similar to that, we can drop in like a maximum value and a minimum value, just so that we have sort of the context around this progress properly done. The last formatting thing that I really like in here, if we go to the gauge options, is we have the ability to flip the orientation from horizontal, so sort of filling from the left to the right, to vertical. So we get that nice thermometer looking visual, which I know in my organization at least, we like using. So, you know, the progress is going from bottom to top. With that, those are sort of the three favorites from this month's release. Just before I sign off, the other two that I really like the look of but just didn't have time to get to today are the perspective support for personalized visuals, and this is a preview feature. This is really cool. This actually addresses one of the maybe one of the sources of frustration that I've seen people run into with Power BI, which is wanting to give some flexibility for the report readers to make some changes to the report itself, but not wanting to expose everything to the end user. You know, they don't need to see all the fields in the data model. They don't need to see all the measures in the back, but maybe they should have access to some fields to sort of drop that in and personalize some of the visuals. So that's love this feature. I'm excited to see how that progresses. And then the second one is this added dynamic formatting to support to more visuals. This functionality came out 2 years ago, I believe. I think it was in 2018. I could be wrong, but dynamic formatting was added to matrix and table visuals and maybe the bar chart as well. Now it's supported in pretty much every visual out of the box in Power BI. So this was awesome to see as well, particularly if you're using the format function within DAX. This is awesome. Gives you great control and flexibility in your report. So that is all that I had today. I'm really excited to hand it over back to Ken, or back to Parv, I guess, to go into the feature presentation for today. So thank you everyone for listening, and I'm sure you're just as excited as I am to get started with the main presentation. So thank you.
Cool deal. Thanks. Parv, are you ready to take over?
Yes, sir. 100%.
All right.
I'm going to share my screen. Can you hear me right?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect.
And I can see your screen in yellow, very Power BI.
So you're seeing a presentation?
Yep, I see your agenda.
Awesome.
It is all yours.
Go, Parv.
Yeah, thanks, Yana. All right. Oh, wow. What a day to present, especially even from home. Vancouver, typical Vancouver weather. I guess there are some people outside Vancouver. I mean, we got a great weather today. Just reminding us what next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months is going to look like. So thanks, everyone, for joining. I'm going to talk about his future presentation about talking about a date table, which we all date table, calendar table, date dimension, you name it. There's tons of names. And we're going to look into some time intelligence functions. I haven't seen one of the things why it is important and why we are talking here about this particular section today is most of the BI reports, regardless of what other analysis we do on the data, they are always somewhat tied up with some sort of a comparison over period, whether it's a previous week, previous hour, previous date, previous month, you name it, right? So a lot of stuff works around the dates, how we are doing, how our business is doing, how our products are selling over time, whatever we want to measure, employee retention, hiring or leaving or termination, whatever the case could be. So we are always working with dates in some sort of shape all the time, mostly. So that's the reason why we're talking about this particular kind of topic today. So I'm in today's presentation, I'm just gonna go over like why date table, why we need it in date table, like in our model. What are time intelligence functions? I'm pretty sure if you guys are already using Power BI, even you started using it for 3 months, 6 months, doesn't matter how long, or any other BI tool, you probably come across these time intelligence functions and the date table. And the presentation is going to more talk about some real-time examples. We will look into Power BI. How does that work? How does Power BI, these time intelligence functions work? So we go through that, some debug techniques as well. A lot of the time what happens is we make these measures, we put these functions in our measures to calculate something like previous year, same period last year and all this stuff. And the results look a little funny and not what we expect. And then all of a sudden, like what's going on? And we'll see how we can debug some of those dates getting passed to these measures and why we're getting those funny numbers. And of course, a little bit about best practices, what we should do, what we should not do, and some stuff where to go and look into other to learn more. About myself, I run a consulting company here in Vancouver, pretty much focused on business intelligence based on Power BI. I'm using Power BI since it came in preview pretty much back in 2015. And since then, I either Power BI stuck to me or I'm stuck to it. I don't know, but I'm enjoying it. The biggest thing is I'm a Power BI community super user. I'm very involved in the community. If you ever have any question on Power BI, I would highly recommend to use community.powerbi.com. Post your questions there, and there are amazing people there to support anything related to Power BI. So there is some sort of a ranking in the community, so I'm one of the super users there. And also, I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. This is my second year. I got MVP back in 2018. And this was my first renewal. Oh, wow, what a process to go through, but thanks, I'm still an MVP. So you can reach me out, LinkedIn. Again, I'm not very active on Twitter, it's there, but my website, my phone, anytime, please reach out to me if you need any kind of assistance and whatnot. All right, let's talk about what is a date table and why it is important in the model. It's a reverse engineering. The way you want to go into that is we have around a time intelligence functions in DAX functions available for us to use, which are around 44 or 45 functions. And they are pretty much, the functions are like, for example, previous year, same period last year, parallel period, previous month, DATEADD, all those functions, DAX function you see, those are like time intelligent functions. And those functions work well with a date table. The reason behind that is there is some metadata associated with the date tables, which allows these functions to work, to perform the calculations, to get us the result what we are looking for. And so that's one of the reasons why we need a time. That doesn't mean that we cannot do without that table, but that's one of the recommendation and the best practice, that we have a common data table, a calendar table in our model, which we use to measure our performance, whether over year, over quarter, over whatever period we decide we want to do that, or we want to slice the data by a different granularity on our periods like year, month, week, quarter. So what makes this date table, the properties of the date table, like how a table can be a date table? One of the key requirement for the date table is that the table that must contain continuous dates. You can't have the gaps in the dates. For example, if you have a calendar table or a date dimension table or date table for year 2019 or in the year 2020, you have to have a 1st January 2019 till either until today or end of the year. The continuous date, which is 365 days for 2019 plus 366 would be for 2020 if I have the full 2 years of a table. So there's a no, you can't have a date table without a gap in your table. So pretty much each date will be listed once in that date table. Again, it has to be unique. It has to be continuous. Those are the two basic properties to create a date table. So if you create a table, whatever you name it, and it has only one column called date, and it has a 3 months of data or a rows of the dates starting from January to March, as far as there is no duplicate record, unique date row, and it is continuous, that is your date table. What that means is all these time intelligence functions will use and take advantage of metadata available in the date table to perform all the calculations. So that's kind of makes a table a date table. Like there's nothing special. We have, you can call it anything. You can call it fiscal calendar table. You can call it whatever you want to call it. As soon as these two basic requirements are met in that table, that becomes your date table. And so those 2 points I already put in this slide here. Like it must have a unique date column with the data type as date and no missing date. So always continuous. The period doesn't matter whether it need to be a full year, half year, 10 years, 20 years, whatever the period is, whatever the length of that table is, it has to be continuous date column and not missing any record. Just gonna talk about, so that's kind of the properties of the date table. Like what are the time intelligence functions we talked about? Like there are around 44, if I'm not wrong. I counted it before this presentation, that's why I'm saying 44. There are 44 time intelligence functions. For example, those can be used for, deliver result like year-to-date calculations, very common things we do in our analysis and reporting, comparison with the previous years, drill down and up from, year to quarter to month or whatever the granularity we want to get to. And there are actually many date these time intelligence functions, and they do pretty much achieve certain results. For example, previous month is a date dimension, a time intelligence function, and then you can also use the DATEADD function and move the dates back by 1 month. There are some of these functions are more sugar coated for easily remember, like previous month, rather than you say pass using DATEADD, pass multiple parameters to it and get to the same result. You can use the previous month, and it's just previous month and one parameter is the date column, and then you achieve the same result. But at some point of time, depending on what granularity you are looking at, those functions can actually behave a little bit differently. And that's where sometimes we see some funny results when we work on our measures using these time intelligence functions, and we will touch base on those as well. When I work in a community and assist in a community, pretty much, let's say if I'm replying 50 posts every day or whatnot, there's around good like 50 to 60% portion of that is always related to something to do with a period or the time, a date, and whatnot. It's important. People are missing. They sometimes they take, okay, I got this order table from my backend system or from Excel sheet and all the stuff, and they start plotting a bar chart on the year and a month and all the stuff. But when they want to go into more advanced comparison and all this stuff, and they don't get the result as they expected to, and then that's where then this date table comes in the picture and becomes really important. So the time intelligence, again, this is like set of functions, pretty much work around the period. It could be different granularities, and they all achieve some sort of work on the period and the time and the date and whatnot. So I'm gonna quickly switch over to one thing before I switch over to actually Power BI, one thing I want to mention here is, apart from these time intelligence functions and achieving business goals to compare year over year, month over month, and whatnot, it does also have a very big impact on the data model. If you're using, in your model, if you don't have a date table done in a way it's supposed to be done. So it does two things. One is like your data model is sometimes bloated so big. For example, if you have 20,000 records of a data table with the 5 date columns in it, and you will see your data model, it will look really big. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, it's only 10,000 records. Why my data model is so big? Now that's the one thing, as in a part of the best practices and what you should do or not do. I will show you here with some of the stats around it. And that's the one thing is really important, to make sure your data model is a clean and you can take advantage of it. It's smaller in size. And the other thing is, of course, these time intelligence functions. So I'm just gonna share my Power BI report. I have a couple of Power BI reports open in front of me. Let me see which one is I want to show. Okay, let's begin with this one. I guess you guys can see this Power BI. Yes. So this particular report is very simple. If I show you guys what it has is actually go to the table view. What we have here is a simple table, sales table. I think I have an Excel in the backend. That doesn't matter what source it is from. It has 3 different date columns in it: order date, due date, and ship date. Typical any order table, you expect the columns. There could be more, and other tables and whatnot. But in this particular example, we have 3 different date tables. So what happens is, behind the scene, if we bring in a data into our model and we have not auto date time intelligence turned off, which I will just quickly show you that where we need to do that, we get to see this hierarchy in our each date column. So we love it. People love it. They said, oh wow, that's great. I got a hierarchy. I can use this order date in here, and I can drill up and down, go to year, to the quarter, and then I can further drill down to months. So without doing anything, we connected to a table. We brought the data in our Power BI model, and all of a sudden we have all this hierarchy built for us. We are super happy. We don't need to do anything, and all works great. But the challenge here is with this model is, for example, if I want to see something, how many orders I'm shipping per month, and how many orders are due, or maybe due in this month, how many I'm shipped in this month, or how many orders I received in this month. We don't have one common a calendar or year. If I'm using, in this particular example, I'm using a due date hierarchy from my due date column. So if I want to see the orders on the same granularity on 2011, I have for example, 6 million orders due, and how many I received, I have no way to look into that as in a common x-axis that give me a due orders, orders I received, or the ship orders, because all of these has its own, basically a calendar table or a date table behind the scene. So what does Power BI do is it automatically creates a hidden table behind the scene, which pretty much create a date table for us. So for example, if you have a 20 years of any data, and let's say you started back in, your first order came in 1990 or 2000, and then you have a orders you are receiving every let's say week or every other alternate day, and the last date of your order is yesterday. What it is going to do is it's going to create a calendar table behind the scene, continues with all those date columns in it. So basically you will have, think about each year has a 365 days, and 20 years is going to create a 6,000 rows for those that one particular date column. So if you have a 5 date columns here, it means 20,000, 6,000 multiplied by X number of columns. For each column, one might have a data starting from back in 30 years and whatnot. So all of a sudden what you have is, you have, in this particular case, you have a 3 hidden date table behind the scene from the start date of that particular column till the end of the date, and then have the full hidden table behind the scene, which allow us to do this kind of build the hierarchy by itself, and showing us this drill down and drill up functionality. What's wrong with this? Nothing. I mean, you can surely use this if you have only one date column. You are not doing any other table in the model. Like this is a sales data. For example, if you have a invoice data, if you have some other data which is associated with some sort of a period or the date, you will not have a common table where you can slice and dice the data by that particular table. So each thing is its own table, and you cannot analyze it together. So that's the challenge. You can't add more stuff into this. So always one recommended thing is you will go and in the file, in option and settings, this is the first thing I do. Actually, now there is a global setting. You can turn this off. You basically go, in this particular case, I will go and data load. In the data load, there is a setting called Time Intelligence, Auto Date Time. So what does this do is, when this is checked on, it automatically creates those hidden date tables for each date column which is in your table or in your model. So if you turn this off, so basically what it's going to do, it's going to hide all those hidden tables. It's going to remove those because it thinks now you don't need these hidden tables, and I'm not going to create it. So you can turn it off for each individual report, or now this is a global setting as well. In my Power BI instance, I have turned it off. So when I start a new report or start building a new report in Power BI, I connect to the data source. I don't want it to create my own, its own date tables behind the scene. I would like to bring my own date table to utilize in the model. So that's the one way that you can get rid of this auto-calculated hidden date table. I'm going to show you the biggest impact of how does it make a difference. So if you look into this particular table in this example, we have only one table, sales table, with 3 different date columns, which we talked about, and around 60,000 rows in our model. Now, it's not a very big, from Power BI perspective, in memory, it's a highly compressed and whatnot. So looking at this thing, it's all look great and whatnot. It's pretty good, nothing to worry about. But if you look into, I'm going to bring another Power BI report here quickly, which I want to show you guys. So here is a similar report. What I have in here quickly, if I go in option and settings, If I go here and looking at a load, my auto date time is turned off. So in this, I didn't want it to create its own hidden table. So the same thing, if I go in a table view, I have a sales table, similar 60,000 records, same 3 columns in my model, the date tables. And first thing you notice, we don't have a hierarchy for our date columns, which we saw in previous example when auto date time was not turned off. So it does not have the hierarchy because it turned it off. It removed those hidden tables. And then I added my own date table, which is just it. Now, there's always a question comes like, where should I add the date table? Should I add it to the DAX by writing some expression here and create it, or should I do it in a Power Query, or should I do it in a backend system, whatever your data warehouse or whatever the source you're connecting to? It doesn't make a difference. The only thing is the way I work on this is I have if I'm working on a backend data warehouse system, usually there's already a dimension calendar table, and then you use that if you can. If you not, I have a template design. Every time I start a report, I have a Power Query a script written in that. I start from template where all the settings are done. The date table is already created. A couple of things you need to do is in this, if you see this particular column called date, the icon of this is changed a little bit different. And the reason behind that is that you mark this table as a special table called mark as a date table. What does that means is it validates that this table has all the properties to be a date table, and also that we can use it in time intelligence functions, and it has some internal metadata which can be used in those time intelligence functions. I have a link to the blog post in my presentation, which I will share you guys with later on, and that talks about why the mark as data table make a difference. So it's pretty simple thing it does is if you go here, I'll just quickly. This is already marked, but it's unmarked now. It's unchecked it. So if I go back, mark as a date table, of course, it's going to ask me pick the column, which is a date. I pick that. It validates that it has all the properties which I talked about earlier, that there is a continuous date in this particular table, and there's no missing date, and all the dates are, the data type is a date type, and there's a unique record. There is it meets all the requirements, and then we can mark it as a date table. All other columns, then all other columns are all other attributes I want in their dimension. Like usually we have like a for the year if you want to drill down and whatnot. And a lot of time the question comes is like, okay, you know, when I turn off the auto date time off, I lose the hierarchy. Before I had like a year, quarter, month, and day, and all the stuff, and I turned it off. It is gone. It's not there anymore, and I want that. So if you are using a one common date dimension or date table, you can create your own hierarchy. In this case, I have created my own, and it's a out-of-the-box functionality from Power BI. Whatever you want in your hierarchy. If you don't want quarter, you take it off. If you don't want month, you take it off. If I want year, quarter, month, week, date, day, or whatever you want to do, I can. Now I have the full control the way I want my hierarchy to be, and I can design it, and then I use it for my visuals or wherever I want to use it and get the same functionality. And other questions usually come in is like, okay, now I have a one date table. You know, I want to measure something. In this particular example, we have, if we look into this, what we're using here, we have a sales amount, and I can drill up and down. And if I look at the sales amount measure, it's actually a state column. So it's just a sum of the sales amount. Now, the question is, what date it is using right now? Like, is it using ship date to sum the sales amount? If I'm looking at 2011, what does this mean, sales amount? Like, is it ship date, or is it a order date, or is it a due date? There's 3 dates. In previous example, when we had auto date time on, we had a hierarchy, and we know we use the due date on the x-axis, and we knew that whatever numbers we are looking based on the due date. But in this case, I'm using from my common date dimension table what numbers I'm getting right now here. So the answer to that question is, first of all, is not this is how I will use in a sales amount directly. I will create a measure and will use that. For example, the sales measure, I will call it some sales amount or whatever I want to call it. So the way you want to look into that is, and this is where the people get caught into that as well. Relationship is very, very important part of any Power BI report. Data modeling and all the stuff is very, very critical. You do the data transformation, Power Query and whatnot. Your data is prepared. You create this date table and all the stuff. Then it all comes down to this data model, which is really important. So in this case, what we see here is the same date table, our dimension connected with our sales table on all three different columns, which is it's connected to the order date, it's connected on the due date, and it's also connected on the ship date. And you all know, if you don't know, then you can have only one active connection between two tables. So in the active connection is highlighted by a solid line, and inactive connection is highlighted by the dotted line. You can only have one active connection. You cannot have more than one. So that's the functionality of how Power BI works. So that it means is whenever I'm using anything on the date dimension and getting the data from the sales, whether it's a quantity, whether it's an amount, it by default is going to use this active connection. It means is if there is a orders, what I'm seeing here is, it means what I'm seeing is that in 2011, I go to 7.1 million orders, worth of 7.1 million and 5.8 million or whatnot. So it's based on that active connection. So if I put the sales amount directly, it is not user friendly. We don't know what number we are looking at. So of course, then our measure would be something called, maybe we will call it order amount or whatever we want to call it. It's a sum of our sales amount. So that's a little bit more specific rather than being saying in the sales amount only, rather than I choose that measure here, not to use the direct column in my view. So this now tells me order amounts by year. Now the beauty here is I want to use how many orders worth of orders are due in 2011. So we have the same 2011, or the x-axis is the same coming from our date dimension. So we can now create another measure. So we can call it orders due. Simple thing, we can use the same sum amount, orders amount if we wanted to, a base measure. And then what we need to do is we need to, this has nothing to do with a time intelligence at this point in time. It's more about how you make an inactive relation to the active relation. So with the use relationship, you can make inactive relation active. So I'm telling to this particular measure, okay, I want to use this relationship, which is between the date column and my due date column from my ordered sales table. So it means this measure, when this measure is going to look into that, it's going to look at the orders amount, but it's going to use this particular relationship if I have been activated this relationship in my measure and made the other one inactive, because there can be always, well, there can be only one active relationship. From the view of this particular new measure which I just created called order due, it's going to use a sales due date as part of the calculation. So if I bring it in here, so now it gives me the ability to see in 2011 I got 7.1 million of orders and 6.9 due and whatnot and what forth, and I can drill down into both of those at the same time, and I don't need two different a date dimensions, so they are on the same granularity. So one slicer, if I put a year slicer on my canvas or whatever I want to do, it's coming from the common what do you call a dimension table, and it's getting used. And similarly, I can create orders due. I can create the ship due orders due for the shipping. And then I will say use relationship rather than the date, due date, I will use the ship date. So a lot of time the people say, you know what, I have a one date column, date dimension, I have a 3 columns or 4 columns in my table, I have only one active relationship, how I compare the data on the same x-axis. So you can actually, with the measures, create inactive relationship to active using this DAX function. So that's why it becomes really important to have a common a table dimension table in your model to visualize the data at the same x-axis or whatever you want to look at. One other thing it does is a very big thing when we turn on the auto date time on off and we remove those hidden tables. Look at that, this is the model size. This is a very simple table. We had only one. I'm going to make it bigger. So we have only one. We saw our sales table. Just go back there. We had our sales table with 3 date columns in there, 60,000 rows. And if you look at the impact on the model for having just with this one table and this number of. This was originally when our auto, this is this new one where the auto date time is off, hidden tables are gone. Our model size is 493 kilobytes, very small, only 2 tables in the model and whatnot. Wherever we were using our original file where the auto date time was on, so it has 3 tables behind the scene, hidden tables for each date column. And our model size was like 2.2 megabyte, which is approximately 75% bigger. So this is a big reduction. I recently worked on a project where their model was, they didn't have a date dimension in there, and their model was around 1.2 gigabyte. And we all know when using Power BI Pro, our model size cannot be more than 1 gig and whatnot. And as soon as I saw that, what I found is it was a financial model and there were dates all over the place. And after changing, just doing this one simple thing, remove the turn the auto date time off, added the date dimension more to the model to analyze and all this stuff. I think the model size went down approximately 60%. So they were around 400 megabytes. So that is big of an impact. And you can clearly see in this particular example with the 60,000 rows, 3 columns, 1 table, and we have a 75% reduction in the model. So this is like a huge thing. Like we sometimes see people say, okay, you know what, I had a 1 table in my model, it was working fine, and all of a sudden I added another table into the model. It is only 20,000 rows, but my model size went so big and it takes so long to run and whatnot. And then you find out the new table he added, it has 4 or 5 different date columns in it, and it has hidden date tables behind the scene, and it went off the roof. So that's one of the things. To analyze this, I would just like to touch on that is basically you can use a, if you haven't, everyone should have a DAX Studio. Of course, now we have external tools in our toolbar, and we can directly run it from there. For example, in this particular case, you can connect to your model. So I'm connecting to my off model. For example, as you can see on the side, these are the tables in my model. And if I go in advanced and I go to view metrics, and I can analyze my vertipack, and this is where I see what does my model look like and what not. So that's how you measure you can see what kind of there's a lot of stuff in here, but I just want to bring it up in case somebody's interested to go and take a look at their model and whatnot after they make these changes, before and after, and they can see how much impact it has on in their own model. And similarly, if I just quickly want to show, and it always comes a question as well where I can see the hidden tables and where they are. In Power BI model, you cannot see it. So if you go to auto date time on, I connect to that. And if you see on my left hand side here, these tables, which we don't see in the model, They are there. They are created in behind the scene. As you can see, all these columns are created based on for each date. We had a 3 date columns in our table, and now we see 3 hidden tables behind the scene created internally hidden, which give us that kind of a hierarchy and whatnot. So that's kind of, you can go back and play around with these things in your model and see how big of a difference this makes. And you can still achieve the same functionality. You are following the best practices, and your model size is a great shape, and you can do a lot of stuff. So 1.2 megabytes. So awesome. Just gonna pause here and see before we go further deep into it if there is any question around this. Something I can ask quickly. Just checking chat window here. Can we have the PBA file? Also, yes. Any contents I'm showing here, I will send it to Ken and team, and then they will share it with you guys. Yeah, as far as Sheikh has a question, like can we have a multiple date table, order date and ship date? What are the advantages and drawback? I just talked about, yes, you can have more than one, but the thing is now if you're comparing something between those two, like how many number of orders we're shipping in this month or year or quarter, if you have 2 different date dimensions, you will not be able to do that kind of comparison. You can surely do that. You will make it a complex DAX and all the stuff. You can do treat as and whatnot. That doesn't mean you cannot do it, but I don't see what advantage that will bring. Yes, Brent, yeah, he replied that. Yeah, you can try and mention, I think that can be 3 different fact tables. You know, you can have a 3 tables. I think that's what you're mentioning here. Like we have 3 tables. One is with the ship date and sales amount, and second is a due date and sales amount or ship amount, orders amount, and third one. The problem with that is the Vertipack analyze. It can surely work. You will have you will have a 3 active relationship with your date table, and then you don't need to in the measure use relationship. The problem with that is it's your compression. It's 3 different tables, and there's going to be if you're doing any sort of a transformation and all the stuff, and the compression behind the scene will be a little bit different. But nothing stops you to not to do that. But in real world example, if we look at that, is usually it's a best practice. We all want to thrive for a star schema. So you have a 1 fact table in the middle, and you have the all the dimensions. I can share the link. It's in actually Power BI Microsoft website as well. Like what's the best practices for the model. We all know the star schema works best with the Power BI. That doesn't mean you cannot have other. So you want to have a 1 fact table in the middle, and then you can have all your dimensions. But not necessarily all the fact tables are at the same granularity, or they have the same things. I've seen maybe more than currently I'm working on a project pretty big with around 1 terabyte in size. There are like 2 or 3 fact tables in that particular model because they are serving a different audience in the organization. And there's a financial data set, and then there is a couple of different ones, but there's around 30 or 40 different dimensions around that, which are connecting those 2 or 3 fact tables together. Yeah, you can surely do that, but it's always recommended to use explicit measures rather than using the direct columns, because you can put in your measure some sort of a logic if you want to remove or add and whatnot. So those are the best practices. That doesn't mean you cannot use the direct columns or the multiple tables and whatnot, but it's what's the best practice recommended for a scalable solution. So that's what it is. All right. Let's move on to. I'm just going to quickly share some some of the things we get caught into these functions, and I love to talk about this thing quite a bit. I created this simple, this is again nothing fancy here. There's just in a calendar dimension, same thing, marked as in a date table, simple thing. A couple of other different tables in here, sales table, discount tables, and whatnot. The thing which I want to show here is how this time intelligence functions works and whatnot, which becomes really interesting when we look at it in the way we are seeing it here. For example, what I have here is on my rows.
No, sorry to interrupt you,
yeah,
but we can't see the screen.
Oh, you can't see my screen?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Faraz, I think that may be an issue with yours because I can see it just fine over here.
Yeah,
so.
I can see it just fine as well. It's
Oh.
working fine.
Oh, sorry. Okay, good. So quickly here, like nothing fancy here, very simple thing. We have a year on rows, a hierarchy, which we created in calendar table, again, as we showed previously, year, quarter, month, date. And I have some measures I have written here, which I will quickly walk you through and just show you how you can debug your things and whatnot. So if you look in here, what I wanted to do in this particular example is two things. Like I want to compare a date with a previous year, previous month comparison, and how does these functions, time intelligence functions, work? So what I have is like for the first one, if we look at the DATEADD minimum functions, the name itself is telling me that I use the DATEADD in this. So what I said is, give me the minimum of the date or whatever the lowest date is given the row context. Now here I'm assuming that we all know how the row context and the filter context work in Power BI. Keeping that assumption in mind, I just don't want to go into that. That's itself in a very big topic in itself. But I want to compare is like when you're using the DATEADD function and previous month function or previous year, same period last year, and how they start showing different things at different time, and then we get caught into why our results are not showing up as it is expected. So here what I have is I said, okay, give me the lowest date in the context. If I'm 2018, give me the smallest date in this context and go back by 1 year. So basically, if I'm in, as you can see in 2008, if I'm looking at the year level, it going back, moving the data set date to the 1 year, because this is where I said the granularity is 1 year. So what I'm getting is perfectly fine. It is telling me if I'm looking at the 2008, so which is 2008 means 1st January 2008 to 31st January 2008, the previous DATEADD moving the data set back by 1 year, giving me January 2007 to 31st December 2007. So I'm very happy. Yes, this is working. It's going back. So any measure I write here, I say sum of order amount and DATEADD this. So it means it can give me the previous year a sales for that particular period. Similarly, what we have is another one, PP. I think PP is a parallel period. Same thing, max and minimum 2 columns. I said, okay, if I use the parallel period, what happens in that case? So same context in 2008, calendar date, and parallel period also, you can DATEADD and the parallel period are the 2 DAX functions or time intelligence function where you can define the granularity, how far back you want to go. -1 means I want to go back. +1 means I want to go in the future. And then also like whether it's a year, you want to go back by year, a month, or a quarter. In this context, we are working on the year because I have other functions which are tightly integrated with the year, like same period last year. The name itself says year. So I want to show how these functions work on the same year granularity. So parallel period and DATEADD functions, you can define, I want to move backward or forward and at what granularity. So it's the same thing. So if I go the PP, parallel period, min and max, so it's giving me the same in this context, which is great. I'm happy here. And if I go the previous year, now we have another function in time intelligence. We say, okay, previous year, So previous year takes only one parameter, which is calendar date. It needs this continuous date. And then previous year, it's giving me, I'm getting the minimum. So I said, okay, whatever the context you're looking at, 2008, give me the minimum of that set. And it's giving me 2007, 1st January is perfect. It doesn't, previous year itself means previous year. There's no like other parameters. So it's just taking date as in a parameter. And similar thing with the same period last year. So that means give me the same period last year. So all looks great if we look at the 2008 at the year level. This is perfectly fine. Doesn't matter what function I use, whether I use DATEADD, whether I use parallel period, whether I use previous year, same period last year. They are giving me the data at the same granularity, and all work looks great. Now let's drill down to the next level and see what happens here. So if I'm looking at the quarter level, the DATEADD functions work in the context. What I'm seeing in quarter, there are 3 months, 1st January 2008 to 31st March 2008. So the previous year parallel to that is 1st January 2007, 31st March 2007. So it works great. This is good. This is what I need if I'm doing any sort of comparison. But look what happens in the parallel period. So parallel period, given the year context, it's always return the full previous year. Even I'm looking at the quarter. So if I created a measure using the parallel period, I'm looking at the quarter level, I will get the full year data for the previous year, not for that particular quarter. So that's where you start like, oh, why these numbers are looking funny. In this particular case, it will be fine, but not in this case. And similarly with the previous year function, it only take data as a parameter. It always return the full previous year. Doesn't matter what granularity you're looking at. So even I'm looking at the Q1 2008, which is made of a 1st January 2008 to 31st March 2008, but it's still giving me the full year. But that same period last year, it works fine because the name itself is same period last year. So I'm looking in Q1 2008, it's giving me parallel to that, the Q1 2007. It becomes a little more interesting actually. If you go further down, now I'm January 2008. So DATEADD works great because January has 1st January 2008 to 31st January. It gives me the parallel to that. So if I'm doing any comparison, it will work perfectly fine. But as we know, the parallel period is giving me the full, and the reason parallel period is giving me the full, I just want to make sure I mention it here because I said I need a year. If I put it month, it will give me the month parallel to that. And then similarly, previous year is always give me the full month, full year, and same period last year giving me parallel to this. This is great. So DATEADD and the same period last year works fine. The advantage with DATEADD is I can move forward. Same period last year is always, I can only compare with the previous year. With the DATEADD, I can go, okay, 2020 compared with the 2017. Or maybe we will get into a situation we will say in 2021, we really don't want to, because of the coronavirus, we don't want to compare 2020 anything with the 2020. 2021 is always compared with 29 and whatnot. So the go 2 years back with the same period last year, I cannot do that. But with the DATEADD, I can give the granularity how far back I want to go and whatnot. And if I go further down to the date level, great, it's 1st January 2008. It gives me 1st January 2007. So the start and end range is the same, parallel to this. Previous parallel period, give the full year. My previous year gave the full year, and the same period last year work perfectly fine. So sometimes you need to look into these functions, because if you don't get the result what you're looking for, all these numbers look very funny. Like you're saying, okay, this year's sale is 20,000 and previous year you manually calculated 18,000, and you use one of these functions and they show different number at a different granularity and you don't know what's going on. This is the one way you can debug it. You just use your function as in a routine, like parallel period, same period last year and whatnot. And this is your time intelligence function here, but you are, instead of returning the measure or the value or the order amount, you are actually returning the range. I can really create minimum and maximum in the same measure, but I just, for the sake of showing it, I create two separate measures. This is just to show you the date context, but it's become, actually, if you look at the numbers, the similar approach I've used here Actually, here is the data example. I will maximize this. So if I'm looking at the 2011 and I want the previous year, so I want to compare with the previous year and with the previous year, previous month, I want to compare how these numbers look totally different. In 2011, let's drill it down. So in January 2011, I have a 469,000, and in 2010, I have a 43,421, which is in December. So it goes back. If I'm using DATEADD, I think this particular function, I will just quickly show you here. If I'm going DATEADD, I'm saying, give me previous month sale. I want to compare current month with the previous month. So January 2011, 469,000 is getting compared with 43,421, which is December sale, and February is getting compared with the January. And similarly, if I'm using the previous month function, in this particular case, I said, give me the sales and the previous month. So this all looks great and whatnot. But if I go further down, see what happens. This previous month, even in particular, this particular sale, if we look at then the first January 2011, $7,157 sale, we are getting the blank value here because it does not see any sales in 31st. It should have shown me 15,012 in this case. Yeah, in 31st December, January 2011, it went back to previous year to get me the 15,000. But this previous month is giving me full month. Even there is, so if I'm looking at the month level, this is fine. These both functions works perfectly fine, the DATEADD and the previous month. But as soon as I go to the next granularity, my DATEADD function is fine because it is aware of what context I'm looking at and how far I want to go back. But the previous month, as I showed you guys in the previous slide, previous month or previous year, they always return the previous year or previous. They always return the full period. Doesn't matter whether you're looking at the date level or whatever level you're looking at. So you want to be very, very careful how you're comparing and whatnot. So this is where you can actually, if somebody is looking at the date level data and looking at this thing, and if we remove this DATEADD column from measure from here for a second, I might be, this doesn't make any sense because even if I'm looking at the 15 January, $6,953 sales, and it is always comparing the full month of the previous year. But what I want is I want to compare the same period in the previous month. And so you have to be careful what functions you want to use, because given this particular exercise here, you can debug what date range you are getting back using those functions, time intelligence functions, and that's based on this your calculation is getting done, and these numbers look a little bit funny. So you just want to make sure, and I think I have a couple of more created here. For example, this one was actually in this particular case, what I wanted to do is I wanted to suppress the total, same function, but I don't want to show if I don't have any sale. I don't, like this guy is always showing me a number repeating every time, but I don't want it to repeat and whatnot. So those just different patterns of how you can control and other stuff. So there's a lot of other stuff, like for example, if you are usually we got into this. This is a very common scenarios. I think we don't have time to talk about that. Like for example, I have a year-to-date promo going on, and I want to compare with the previous year. But the challenge is when I'm doing the previous year in January 2013, even if I don't have any value in here, it's still giving me for the previous year, and I don't want that. I don't want it to show me previous year if I don't have the value in the current year. And if I just straight use the previous year with this measure, I'm getting all 12 months, but whereas there's no value in 2013, there's nothing transaction happened in 2013, but because of the function I said gave me the previous year, I'm getting previous year's value, January 2012, 9,075, and I'm getting that. But this, I don't want this. So this another function, a measure I have written here, where what I'm doing is I'm still using a function, but I'm saying whatever my most recent and last transaction date in my model is, just work until that date and don't go forward. And my last transaction date is in October 2012, so this does not spill over to the other months, because if there's no data. So if I go remove my other measures, so this is what I get to see. As I can see, I have only October 2012 for this year, and previous also stop in there. So it's kind of how I stop into this year, and this one would be for the previous year. I just don't want, if I don't have a data, that it shows all those months and whatnot. So this stops in October 2012, even if I'm comparing. So a lot of functionalities. It's all about date, finding the date range. It's all into finding the date range, what function you want to use, and always debug it. Pass the function to the measure, get the concatenate it, or whatever the way you like it, and just see what value you are getting, and that will give you the range, what range it is getting calculated on. So pretty much just gonna quickly jump back to presentation here to make sure I don't miss something important here to talk about. So we just talked about this. I talked about always add a date table in your model. I created a template all the time. Sort columns like month name always come a challenge. Okay, January, February, March, they're showing up. April shows up the first month and don't know what to do. So you can use the sort by column example. Remove all the aggregations. Like by default, any number column in that model is always by default get aggregated. So remove those aggregations, as a date table, as just a couple of those things, which is really, really important. And here are some, I follow these posts and all the stuff. Some of these I find very interesting. And one I was talking about why time intelligence and mark data and date table is a link. I think this is SQL BI guys. Other things, how you add the date table in your model. What is expanded date tables. This one is really interesting. Row-based time intelligence, really, really good blog to read and follow and use in your models and whatnot. That's pretty much it. I can keep on talking, but I don't think time allows. But thanks everyone for being here and participating. And of course, after the call, if you guys after this session, you guys have any question or anything you want to ask about this, my contact information is here. You send me an email, or my phone number is there, and feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Parv. Appreciate that. Thanks to Joseph for doing our What's New in Power BI at the beginning. Yana for hosting our meetup group here again. We really appreciate it. I hope everybody's enjoyed the meetup. I'm just going to go and throw up one more thing on our slide. Well, a couple more things actually on our slide deck here. So if I can just go and share my screen again real quick. Once again, just a big thanks to the sponsors for the event. We appreciate obviously Microsoft, Excel Guru, Skillwave, and PASS for helping us out to make sure that everything was going to go along and go smoothly today. And I just want to throw out on behalf of Excel Guru, a reminder, we do have a self-service BI bootcamp to learn all about things like DAX patterns that Parv was showing you, some of the Power Query patterns that Joseph mentioned in his original stuff, and how to actually build proper models to help you out, do your reporting the right way with both Excel and Power BI. So if you're interested, it runs over a few weeks, and so it's not all in a quick, drinking from the fire hose session. You get some time to breathe and actually still work during the process. If you're interested, check it out at skillwave.training. And the last thing I just want to throw out there is that super excited that we've got Casey Reineke coming from Microsoft for our next meetup in September. And she's going to be showing us all about new rich data types in Excel with Wolfram Alpha, which is going to be pretty cool. And I think she's also got a new function that's coming into Excel as well that she's going to be talking about. So some pretty neat stuff coming along. And on that note, I am going to sign off for this particular meetup. Thanks everyone for coming. You found it interesting, and what we will be doing is we will be downloading this and posting it up. I'll post it on my YouTube channel and post a link in the meetup once we've got it, and we'll make sure that everybody knows about it. So thanks again. We'll see you next month.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.